Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu OG Industry Shannon, and Will Warren Davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Okay, guys, welcome to episode 8 of the Wot Supp podcast. Tonight we have Paul Wigger, all the way from Western Australia, who is the founder of Fat Burners Only with his lovely partner Fiona. And they've built possibly the biggest online community and online supplement website that we've seen in the Australian market to date. So it's been a pretty incredible growth story and success story that we wanted to pick Paul's brains on tonight and put a bit of a focus on definitely the business angle on how you got there, Paul, and definitely some of the things you can advise other people who are, hoping to come into the same space, how to also. So without further delay, we have our usual hosts. So there's myself, Will, owner of Prime Bolix Nutrition, Stu Shannon, owner of Universal Supplements. Say howdy, Stu.
G'day, guys. Looking forward to this one. Paul is kind of one of those figures in the industry that I guess everyone's seen him pop up on their socials at some point in time. I think he's hacked the Facebook algorithm somehow. So if you don't know this guy's face, well, you're living under a rock or in the Amazon somewhere in a tribe. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Yeah, good to be here. Appreciate you saying that. It's weird to think that, hey, maybe everyone has seen my face. You don't think of it when you're doing it. You just run your life. And I hear that from time to time, and it kind of freaks me out. But yeah, I suppose it must be true. You're saying it.
Pretty famous, mate, particularly being the red-capped crusader. I believe the red hat's become somewhat famous, as we spoke about last chat, Paul.
Yeah.
It's a bit of...
do you own any other coloured caps, or is it just like a series? Because what I'm picturing is, I can't remember what movie it's off, but he's got a wardrobe and it's all the same shirt and he just chooses a different one each day. Is it just an alignment of New York Yankees red caps in your wardrobe?
Well, it didn't start red, to be honest. It just started, I think I had a black cap, but I wore a red cap one day, and then it's actually a bit of a funny story. I had one of the famous photographers in Western Australia who does all the fitness photography, Brett Earl. He has a lot of followers, and he put up the Natural Choice, which was my store. It's named when I own them, the Natural Choice Manager's Starter Pack, and it had a hat, it had sunnies, and it had something else, but it went viral through WA, and then since then I've been known as the Red Hat Dude.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. And you came, as your origins were in retail, and now obviously going to the online space. How have you found that like, how did you manage that transition? It's a vastly different business model. You went from marketing to literally the people in your own backyard to countrywide, large scale. Essentially, very similar to what I do in the distribution game. So, how did you do that? How did you go from literally one-on-one interactions? It's all sort of micro-scale promotions with the store, your own backyard area, to now where you're running a website that pumps out to tens of thousands of people across the country. How did that start?
Well, it was sort of just organic with the way it really happened. Just to quickly go back to Stu's question, I only own one red hat at a time, but I've got about 20 dirty ones now. I only wear one hat until I get a dirty. But so what I did initially is I bought a supplement store that wasn't doing too well, and I was told I was mad at the time, and it went really well, really quick, which we might talk a little bit about later. But basically, it got to a point where I had 3 stores, and it was the choice of, look, do I open a 4th retail location, a 5th one, a 6th one, or should I make the 4th one, the next one, an online store? So it ended up being an online store. And then I thought, hey, look, as far as quality control goes, I don't think I want to open any more stores because I want to keep the quality up. And we just sort of transitioned where I was running 3 busy retail locations, bricks and mortar location, and then doing a startup online, which is very, very difficult. And I'm sure we'll talk about more of that in a bit.
Yeah, that's a massive thing. It's voodoo, isn't it? Like, I think you and I, Paul, have had many conversations about this in recent history, where trying to crack that perfect formula within the online space can be quite baffling compared to I suppose, in a retail setting, and we're fortunate enough to have all three of us have a good background in retail. It's very much about, just deliver customer service to those people walking through the doors day in, day out. You'll generally find success. If you offer great value to your customers, you'll be fine. Online's a very different animal. It's much less simple, and it's much, it's not that simple. So that's definitely somewhere I'd love to go down. That rabbit hole. What was the going from running 3 stores to running a startup online? It was completely different thinking, a different business model altogether. What sort of struggles did you come up with at the start with that, mate? Getting your head around a very different animal.
Well, the first thing is, how do you get noticed? And sorry, I've got someone over, so you might hear a bit of talking and doorbells happening in the background. But basically, you're on an online platform where there's 20, 30, now there's probably 100 different competitors. Why and how is anyone going to land on your page? And so when we first started in 2013, we had probably, and Fiona's standing right here, she'll probably agree with me, the ugliest looking website of all time. If I could show you a picture of it, you'd laugh. But we had this website, we put it up, and for the first 3 weeks, I thought, hey, we're up, we're going to get a sale. We didn't get a single sale in 3 weeks. And I still remember that first sale 3 weeks in. It blew my mind. It was a hydroxycut Elite, the 5390, and I still remember the name of the person who bought it. And we didn't have any stock because we're running it out. His
name was Paul Wigger.
I had to get that monkey off my back, so I paid myself nothing. So I brought it home from the store, and we packaged it up and we posted it out. And then I think we ended up thinking, well, we need to somehow do some advertising. So we found a company sponsored something or other, and we're paying them $80 a week just to try and get some sort of flow happening. And then occasionally we'd get a sale. We were spending money on Google, which back then you could spend $2, $3 on Google and get a sale. Now you're looking at $30, $40 for an acquisition. And Google now says it's more of a customer acquisition. So in other words, we'll spend all that money to get yourself a customer. Don't expect to make money from us. You'll get the customer for the future. But back then you could spend $3 or $5 or whatever and get a sale. So, we were getting some sales ticking over. And
it looks like we've lost Paul's audio for a minute there. So we'll just get Paul back online while he's having some technical difficulties.
When you get a phone call.
There we go.
You got a phone call, did you?
Yeah, what happens when that happens?
Audio cuts out.
Yeah, we just lost audio, that was all.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I should tell you guys that I get pretty much a phone call every 5 minutes, so this is going to be tough.
Airplane mode might work, actually. Are you on Wi-Fi, Paul?
I am on Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah, so if you put your phone on airplane mode, you should still be in the meeting. Should
and
still
leave
be able
Wi-Fi
to
on.
Do all this. Make sure your Wi-Fi is on, and no one can call you.
Yep, so I'll go, the Wi-Fi turns off, I turn it back on.
we can edit this out of the final podcast if we want to, or we can leave it in to show that we're real.
Show that we are genuine people with very little creative intellect in the world of the tech space. But
we've definitely lost Paul there for a minute.
Bingo.
But I'm back.
He's back.
He's back.
Yay.
I'm back.
So,
everything that you were saying there, Paul, about advertising and stuff like that, it just for me, it's almost like a deja vu thing. When I started my online store in 2015, and it was the exact same thing. Built my web page, launched it, and I thought that's it. That's all you need to do. It's put some products online and then just rub your hands together while the cash flows in. But it really doesn't happen. And, there's a saying that my buddy who is, he's now runs an entire business around digital marketing, and you've got to rank to bank. So if you ain't one of those top sort of 3 or 4 listings on Google as someone searches for a particular term, you are not making a sale. And it's a really, really tricky territory to navigate. And it's an expensive one at times.
Oh, it's crazy. And you sometimes have to pick the battle. Like it's quite funny when I Google myself. my website isn't the first listing for most products, which I always find quite hilarious. Like if you Google Primebolic's Grind or Whey Ripped, what have you, it'll usually go to someone like Paul, Massive Joe's, like any number of online retailers. Well before mine gets to my own website goes up. Admittedly, I only use mine as a reference for retailers to look at, but it's quite a funny space when you can. I can't find my own things on my own site. And it shows how Google has come so far. Like you really. Because we do nothing for ours, we don't push it, don't promote, push it, no SEO work at all, and it really does show. Like you have to be, you can't set and forget anymore. You have to be if you want that to be your business model, you have to really, really heavily invest in it.
I don't know if set and forget was ever a thing. I think that just people thought that, like even with social media marketing and stuff like that, like you got to be putting some either huge time and effort into it, or you got to be paying someone good money to do it for you. And I think that that's probably a hard learning curve for all of us, right, Paul?
Absolutely, and it's expensive. When you're paying team members and staff members, or especially if you're paying digital marketing contractors where their hourly rate is just huge, it adds up really, really fast. So you better be doing some big business already to be able to afford to pay those bills. And so I always say to people, I would have never been able to start my online store without my retail stores. It's just, to me, it would be impossible, absolutely impossible. And so people that want to just jump into the online space without a retail store, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, well, that's what I found as well. With my online store, it took me a good probably 3 years before I was truly ranking for a lot of the products. And that was, working consistently. I didn't have the money to pay a big digital marketing company to run it or anything for me. So I was spending at least 3 to 4 hours every single night after I closed up my shop on SEO and on social media marketing. I was going and doing courses and all sorts of stuff. And, it was, for me, the one thing that I did have was I had time. The one thing that I didn't have was a lot of money, but I had enough money in that my physical store could generate revenue for me while I was trying to slowly build the online store. And it sounds like really I'm probably just a few years behind exactly what you've done.
Well, it really does, yeah. So you did it 2015, so maybe just a couple of years off. So in 2 years' time, you'll be where we are.
I'll be you. I'll be wearing a red hat.
You'll be there.
That's right.
I find that quite fascinating, though. Like and Stu and I, and I think and a few other people have crossed my paths, have remarked at their comment. And I think this is something that our listeners who, they're fitness minded, they're supplement minded, but they're also business minded. Is what for a lot of them, I think. A lot of people that listen to this are fellow distributors, people in the game, business owners, and I think something of interest in this that Stu raised before was that you very early on really picked your market. You fat burners only fat burners. That's you in a nutshell, right? A lot of people are scared to put themselves in a niche and only, they fear if they do something like that, they're going to exclude the rest of the market. But in my experience, when you stay in your own lane and pick one thing and crush it, you tend to stand out in your own right. But it seems risky from the start. So what advice would you give the budding young entrepreneur trying to start out? They want to do something, a passion project, but they find, just like yourself, how did you do that? How did you come up with the cojones to sort of, do such a potentially on paper limiting, title to your business that actually played out really, really well for you by the looks of it? Well, how did that? Yeah.
It has. Well, just as a side note, as you know, we don't only sell fat burners now. We sell everything. But you're right. At the start, it was just fat burners, hence the name. And it was the simple reason. I didn't have a warehouse to store a lot of stock. I wasn't interested in picking a million different items to have to upload. I was doing it, and I had a small team that was working on it. If you're uploading thousands of products, you'll never get there. So I thought, well, what products are popular? Everybody wants to burn body fat. What are small, so I can store them in my garage when I get huge? Because at the start, I was pulling them from the shop and bringing them home every night. But if I had to store in the garage, what could I store? Well, fat burners are small. Everybody wants to burn body fat, and they're cheap to post. And I thought, all right, I think I can make it work with my limited amount of time running 3 stores. I think I can also make a fat burning website work. That and the fact that in our 3 retail stores, we sold a lot of fat burners already. So in the industry, if you're moving a lot of a certain product, you obviously can get better deals and therefore get better margins. And so we were doing a lot of fat burners, and all of it sort of lined up. Like I said, small space, cheap to post, everybody wants it, and better margins. And then it all came together as fat burners only.
Right, that's clever. That's very clever.
I think you picked the right product category as well. Like, being that I've been in retail since 2009. Fat burners have almost always been the biggest sellers in my stores anyway. I mean, we sell in my store at the moment, we sell more fat burners than all of the other product categories combined. By far more fat burners than anything else. More than pre-workouts, more than proteins, it's fat burners. And it's a fat burning industry, right?
Well, do you know what that tells me, though, is something that you actually know what you're doing. Because people that don't know what they're doing in a retail supplement store don't actually sell a lot of fat burners. It's fat burners only sell when you can get a result for the customer, which means understanding them, recommending them the right products, and giving them the right advice. So people that know what they're doing can sell a lot of fat burners. That's a good sign. You must know what you're doing, Stu.
Well, I like to think so. You know, I've put a lot of time and energy into this, so let's hope I know something by now.
There's been a lot of guys in the industry longer than you that still don't sell a lot of fat burners, if you know what I mean.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. Educational game's a big one. I found. I guess that's what when I started my brand. That was one space. That's the sort of area I wanted to be unique in, because I think all 3 of us are. Can agree that I think the ones that have done it well, just like with fat burners only, we've all picked. You pick an area, a niche, and you really, you do your all at it. You find you find your space, you find what you're, most competent at, and you try and develop your craft. I think, and I reckon there's a lot there of like value-wise for listeners to draw on. That it's not always about trying to do everything in a shotgun approach and try and, like you said, you could have started and gone, I'll try and capture everyone. I'll stock all the major brands of time. I'll stock all the proteins, pre-workouts, amino acids, hormonal products. Although back then there weren't any hormonal products that were except just straight tribulus, I think. But yeah, you could have stocked everything, but you didn't, and it would have, it would have made it hard to start with as well. But it allows you to really focus in on what's important. I think that's pretty useful for people starting businesses, because like I have that problem often where I get distracted, and you want to do a million projects at once, and you'll always try and branch off and do cool side projects. But yeah, if you want to really succeed, I think there's a lot of time you have to spend just really zeroing in on your one area of expertise. You have to be known for something. You have to stand out for something.
That's true, and that's taken me a long time to come to grips with as well, because Fiona, my partner, she's a workhorse, and she's also extremely intelligent. She's one of those people where there's nothing that she can't do. So like, I'm looking at a website and I want to delete something off it. I have no idea where to start, how to do the coding. She's one of those people that might have never seen it before. She can go ahead and just do it. But yeah, I'm the dreamer. So she's workhorse and I'm the dreamer, and I come up with 100 different things, and I try and do them all, and nothing gets done well. So it's taken me a while to learn, hey, look, you might have an idea that you think could make you $100 million right now, but you've got something in front of you making you $100,000 that you should probably do well. And so I'm starting to sort of get rid of all that external stuff and drive that focus, which is hard for me to do because I keep getting ideas all the time.
Yeah, well,
as you do, I'm sure.
It's the same with my business coach. Actually had a similar conversation like this with me the other day, and he said, Stewie, the way you go about things is you've got all these ideas pouring out. It's like you're standing there with a machine gun, just firing it. He said, what my job is to try and take those bullets and really bring the spread down into a much smaller targeted space. And I think it's good to have the right people in your corner as well, right? I use a business coach, but I think the team that surrounds you is a big part of it. For me anyway, is that something that you found, Paul, having the right people around you is really important?
Absolutely. Well, actually also online, but especially in a retail location, because if you don't have the right people serving your customers, they're not coming back. So given that I had 3 stores, I couldn't be everywhere at once. So yes, you needed the right people around. Otherwise, it just doesn't work and your stores suffer. And they can do a lot of damage. The wrong person can do a lot of damage quite quick, but the right person, it actually takes them a long time to build it up.
It's weird, isn't it, that way? It only takes the one bad review, and it's something like about human psychology. It was a really interesting study in that where they found that only they found people when they would tell themselves a negative sentiment once, and it took 14 good sentiments to outweigh that in their head. So to have a positive net positive result after hearing that negative self-talk, in this particular study, it was something about, I think it was something to do with, they were looking at, what motivated people in success and how people continue to, grow and so on, despite adversity. And it was literally one bad comment took 14 times saying the opposite to get out of to balance in your head. So we have, like you said, one bad person in store will all the time people remember the bad for the good. You go in and have even mediocre. You'll have, if someone comes in and just does their job in a retail setting, you go in, customer gets what they want, they leave semi-happy, not overwhelmed, but not underwhelmed. Even then, it takes years sometimes to get a reputation versus the one guy that happened to make a pretty tragic set of recommendations, and you hear it. That's all you hear in the customers. It seems it's really weird, that effect with human psychology. Sadly,
I think being that we've all had businesses where we've had teams around us and staff and whatnot, something I've always found hard, and this is something that I'd like to ask your advice on, Paul. How do you pick the bad apple? How do you spot it? And is your kind of policy to remove the bad apple immediately, or how do you go about that?
Yes. So look, being that I had retail stores for 7 years, I did have a few bad apples, and look, sometimes they stayed around for a long time. But yes, now in my current business, if we see someone that just isn't working, we remove them straight away. In saying that, I gave one guy a chance earlier this year, but then we had to move him on 2 weeks later. So it just wasn't a good fit. But I find I'm getting better at, because it's so hard to get rid of someone. You don't like to disappoint people. You don't like to upset people. It's just not a nice thing to do.
Horrible.
But we do get rid of them straight away. And how do you tell? Well, sometimes you just can't. They're good when you first meet them, and then you see something, and that a couple of weeks in, and then you hear something from a customer, and you work it out eventually. It's really hard to tell. But as soon as you find out, get rid of them and do it in the right way.
So get it done quick, get it done swift, get it done silent.
You get it done silent as well. Yeah.
I agree with you, Paul. That's because you're a lovely bloke, Paul, and I find it's very difficult when it's a human game at the end of the day, isn't it? Like where you're an employee, you have many staff there at the HQ. At my peak, I only had half a dozen or so, and you see, like, you get to a point, and Stu's got casuals in his store as well, and we're all people, and the worst thing in the world is when someone's not performing, and you know what you have to do as an employer. It doesn't make it any easier. It's pretty gross. That no matter how long you've done it for, I think it's pretty disgusting. Personally, it hurts.
It's pretty hard, but if you do it nowadays, I'm sort of learning if you do it the right way, they can deselect themselves. So you just ramp up a little bit of the pressure. You ask them how it's working out for them, if they think they're doing a good job, and usually the right they'll say, look, I know I could probably improve here and here, and if they don't, they'll deselect themselves. There's always ways to do it. Kerwin Ray, if you've ever seen him, do you know Kerwin Ray?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Kerwin Ray. I watch a lot of his stuff.
He's so good, and he's got a small little clip on how to eject someone. Changed my whole opinion on how to do it, and just started following that. It's so much easier, because otherwise you go to it and you're like, all right, mate, you're not good enough. You've got to leave. How are they going to respond? It's not going to go well. Plus, then you've got legal ramifications if you do anything like that. So, yeah, if you do it the right way, they'll deselect.
This is practical.
It's a lot easier.
This is great. This is actually practical information for current employers, business owners. That was what I was looking forward to with tonight's episode, because it's we're all sort of, all three of us are somewhat in the trenches with different scale, with different operational types. We've got retail, wholesale, online, and it's really quite interesting here. But that's really practical advice on how to handle day-to-day stuff, like employers every day. And people, if you wish to go into a business and hopefully plan to grow one day, you will have to bring on staff to help you scale up your business, and you will have to know how to handle it. And it's all on the flip side. I think, I guess the other thing I had to learn was a lot of humility was something you have to have, and be able to cop that it's a lot of the time it falls back on you as the leader, unfortunately. If your staff aren't performing, I used to go, the knee-jerk reaction is, why aren't they doing this job? Why aren't they performing? And in reality, it's, well, I'm not giving them the structure, I'm not giving them the tools, I'm not giving them the leadership, I'm not showing them how to do it. It's 90% of the time, for me, in my experience, which is I wasn't, it comes back to me at the end of the day. And that's hard. That's hard to learn. It's a very adult lesson. Someone else is making a mistake, but it's your fault, and you're like,
taking ownership of it as the leader is it's definitely something that takes some experience to acquire. I think a lot of people want to tell themselves that I'm the supreme leader and I should never be questioned and I'm never wrong, but it's pretty horrid approach to leadership, actually. I wanted to shift gears just a touch, because there's this burning question that I've been wanting to ask you ever since I found out that we were going to have you on the show, and that is, being that you're the man behind Fat Burners Only, and it's kind of almost become uber cool in the last few years to say that fat burners don't work, regardless of the enormous amount of data that we have, regardless of what the body of evidence says, regardless of any of that. It's like every second kind of fitness guru wants to say that not only supplements are a waste of time, but that fat burners are a bull. And I'm sure you've copped that a lot with your social media, being how big your social media presence is. What's your response to that, and how have you tackled it?
Well, we were getting it a lot maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. We found lately that it's actually started reducing, and we hardly hear it at all anymore. But first of all, I suppose you've got to ask, who are the people that are saying that? And so, if you've got a PT saying that, well, it's in their interest to say that, because if people can take fat burners and lose weight, then PTs get less clients. And so you'll find a lot of PTs do say that. But really, you've just got to boil it down to the science. And I know you said we don't want to go necessarily too technical, but if we go down to something that PTs can understand, that the everyday layman can understand, that shop owners can understand, calories in versus calories out. If you're eating as many calories as you're burning, you're not going to change. If you're eating more, you're probably going to put on weight. If you're consuming less than what you're burning, you should lose tissue, because the body can't burn that food as fuel. It's not there. You burn it up. It then has to go to your body. So what does a fat burner do? So without, like I said, getting too technical, it has ingredients in there to activate the central nervous system, increase heart rate, release adrenaline, noradrenaline, and epinephrine from the adrenal glands, which increases calorie burn. So what we're doing with a fat burner is we're increasing the differential between calories in and calories out. And if we can get it further away, we can burn more body fat. It's as simple as that. So if an expert, or even if a layman turns around and says, look, fat burners don't work, well, it's possible that there's something in your environment that's changed. It's possible that there is a genetic predisposition to you and not other people, or there might be a hormonal issue, but there's so many variables on why it might not work for you that what they would need to do, I would say to anyone that says that, go speak to someone like Stu who knows what they're doing, or Will. They will figure out a supplement protocol that will work, because that's what we do.
I think the funny thing is that, people who claim fat burners don't work as just a broad statement, if you present them with something that, for example, is, a prescription fat burning compound, I know there's some heavy stimulant prescription fat burners out there, or if you talk about, illegal fat burners like clenbuterol and DNP and this sort of thing, there's no argument. They're happy to accept that they work. But all of a sudden, if it's a supplement, now it can't work, but essentially a lot of them work in the same way. Like you said, one of the best tools we have is central nervous system stimulants. And when we stimulate the central nervous system, we create a response that through a number of processes will make us burn more energy at rest, right? What do you think is... I suppose you answered it a little bit before when you said that it's in a PT's interest to say that, but why do you think it is has become so popular and such a in vogue thing to say? It's almost like if you want to get attention and you want to get views, you should say that fat burners are crap.
Yeah. So you go, Will.
I think it's going to be it's become popular now, and this didn't happen 5 years ago or so. It's become very, very popular to have be an evangelist for something, right? Be an advocate for one thing, but by being an advocate for one thing so wholeheartedly, you inherit the territory of being against something else. So, for example, we've seen the rise in popularity the last few years: keto, carnivore, paleo. If you're any one of these three, you can't talk to the other two. If you're carnivore, you can't talk to... So I think people have gotten into the school of supplements work, supplements don't. And I always hear it for some reason bundled into the same logic of they go, and it often is people who are in the industry. I'll hear trainers and coaches tell me, I'm not really into supplements. I prefer, I'm more of a natural approach. And I tend to then rattle off my nutritional panel, which is 90% herbs. And they still tend to want to refute the data. But I think I think people now, it's an advertising thing because there's a lot of competition, very saturated market, and to stand out, I think you have to have a unique opinion, right? To stand out amongst the noise. And I think, unfortunately, with that sometimes comes the territory of you have to, they choose their ground. And I think, supplements just an easy scapegoat. I think. But there's amazing data. I can recite countless studies on botanicals that do amazing things, on in the hormonal space, things that like supplements can make amazing impacts on the hormonal space, which will in turn manipulate that calories in, calories out model. There's no denying it works. It's just a case of, I think it's more popular to say they don't than it is to say they do, because studies are boring.
Well, I think people tend to have this, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Paul, but I think people tend to have this this need and urge to watch things that are negative and to watch things that are, mudslinging at something. People love it. People love the drama. It's like if you're someone who says that something someone else is doing is crap, you're going to have this band of army of pitchfork wielding, trolls behind you. Is it that people just thrive off negativity and thrive off, mudslinging?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to the person that they are. You'll get some people that they'll see the mudslinging, they'll turn off. There'll be some people that see the mudslinging and it sort of fuels that dopamine and that evocative response. I might take them back to school where they were in that cool kids gang that like to bully people, and they enjoy it. But, you can get pretty deep into the psychology behind why they do it. But it's true. There are people out there that just enjoy doing that sort of thing. And so you've got to recognize that, try not to take it personally. But again, they're saying it, I think, as well, because you've got to sort of see it from their perspective. If you're a PT and you've got someone coming in saying, I've been trying fat burners, they're not working, you're going to get a bit mad. I'm trying to help this person. They've wasted their money on fat burners. They might not have got the story behind why they weren't working. Maybe that person was having a fat burner and eating McDonald's 3 times a day. Or they're turning around and someone's saying, I'm getting really great results from a fat burner. And then the PT goes, wait a second, that's costing me money. I'm the one that's getting results. Or maybe they've got great results as a PT from not taking supplements. They look amazing and think, well, you don't need supplements. Therefore, they make the connection that supplements don't work. There's so many different reasons why they could say it, plus that environmental growing up, emotional state. There's so many reasons why they could say it, but yeah, it happens. All I can say is, like you've said, like Will said, scientifically, they work. There's no doubting that they work. You'll find that the expert PTs, like the really, really high-end PTs, do they use supplements? Absolutely, because they understand them. So I would always say, go to the expert in the field, and they will always use supplements.
That's 100%. I don't think I think you'd be hard pressed to find an elite athlete in any sport who doesn't use some sort of a supplement protocol, right?
Yeah,
100%. And we had 3 stores in Western Australia, and for the last 3 or 4 years, every single federation winner came to our store of all of the bodybuilding competitions. And it was funny, they'd come in at 4th place, 3rd place, and then within 1 year of seeing me, everything else was on point. They were on diet, they were on exercise, they looked amazing, but they just weren't the top. We'd get them on the right sup regime, and then next competition, they were winning it, and they were miles ahead. And look, I'm massively of the adage, it's 90% training and diet, but that 10% that you got from supplements, or they got from supplements, turn them into champions. So that's my experience with it.
it's an interesting space, that one. I'm really glad you touched on dopamine for a second there, because we don't exclusively not geek out. It's fun because I read a really interesting thing on this where it was all about dopamine and choline, and we've become really big on the tropics, particularly Stu and I recently, and I found particularly how people are wired is a really fascinating space, and I think it plays into yes, this is the tropic product now. But I think what's really wicked is like people getting into business are often the A-type personality, the driven, the ambitious, the go people. And it came, I always wanted to see what that was about. And I thought it was to do with how the basal setting of your central nervous system, how wired you are as a person, how high your sympathetic tone was, right? So how much of a flight or fight response you give out to a given stressor. But I looked deeper than that, and it was dopamine related, and which you mentioned there before, Paul. And it was very much a case of, we have the enzymes that break down dopamine often can be either faster, so they're recessive. There's 3 categories. Essentially, it's either that can be if the sort of wiring that makes you the type of person that can get stimulus from things like joining the mob and so on. It might be a simple case of you've either got your ability to produce dopamine is not as fast as your ability to clear dopamine. So you need constant stimulus to feel that reward center hit that you get from a dopamine hit. Conversely, it might be something that stays elevated for a long time from a small stimulus because your dopamine clearance is a lot slower. And that enzyme, so your COMT is the enzyme. That's a lot slower, and so you can maintain a positive mood, a reward feeling, a focus for a longer period of time from that one given stimulus and so on. But it's just when you mentioned the dopamine and behind psychology, and then looking at the subs that you would give to people in comp prep to help them, it's almost always some adrenal support and some hormonal support, and it all comes down to stresses, and that all comes down to how you perceive the stresses, which comes back to the neurochem. So sorry, really weird tangent, but just when you mentioned it, I had to go with it.
I love dopamine too. Like dopamine, it's a big part of our market because people want to be driven, and there are supplements that are clinically shown, like choline, and I like the addition of 200 milligrams of phosphatidylserine in the neurocrams, amazing. These are ingredients that are very popular. Again, they're clinically shown to work, and they'll help with that motivation and drive.
100%. I don't think anyone would be saying that they don't like dopamine. So it's if you can take something that can boost dopamine production even a little bit, like for myself, I say go for it. It's I think it's an area that's almost kind of left out of the supplement world, or has been for a long time. No one was looking at what can we take to to manipulate brain chemistry. It was always, what can we take to increase muscle mass? What can we take to decrease body fat? And we were always kind of looking for this, I guess, kind of this direct link. It was like, how can we go from putting something in our mouth to making that burn up fat in one step? But there's sometimes a few more steps. And if we take those steps, all of a sudden, it's like the link's completed and bang, we start to see results. And I find that a lot with these sort of products that we can use to reduce cortisol or increase dopamine or serotonin production. All of a sudden, the other products that we're using, bang, 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 they start working. And it's really this amazing process. And you see people light up when when they finally crack the code and the puzzle is completed in front of them.
It takes a while to learn. You need to learn it though, and you got to learn through experience. It takes time.
It does, but it's a fascinating game once you get into it. I think particularly the brain has been really big. So I think that's a huge part of, and we spoke this with our previous guest on episode 7 with Daniel Knust about. He's very big on mindset, I suppose, and I think a lot of people who are, a lot of our listeners who are ambitious, they're probably ambitious-driven people. I would like to think, bodybuilding is a hard sport. Business is a hard game. These things take years of discipline, years of accepting more risk than most normal people are happy to accept. Like in bodybuilding, live in a very restrictive lifestyle of extremes a lot of the time. You've got to have a particular mindset behind you. And I think that's where it got me into looking very deeply into how supplements can help that. And I think going to, like, for example, applying to your model, fat burners, and obviously you have all products now, but let's say the fat burner space, a huge part of fat loss is mental, right? Like, and a huge part of your response to whether you're going to have sugar cravings that day, whether you're going to have the motivation and mood to want the best for yourself and want to achieve that body composition change. That all comes from the neural angle. That's all choline, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. It comes back to the chem, and it's really, really quite, particularly choline, right? Choline's a really, really sick little guy. It's got some really, really nice things. Phosphatidylserine, acetylcholine, alpha GPC. These are all things with real data that will show improved focus, mood, memory, attention, and everyday people can benefit from that, whether it's business, fitness, fat loss. I think it's just incredible what we can bring to people now. I get really excited when we can, all three of us, impact a lot of people, and we bring.
I can tell you're excited right now, Will. Every time we start talking about serotonin and dopamine, you get a big release of it.
I do, mate. I get a high.
I can see it in his face.
Yeah. While we're talking about getting excited, then let's throw this question to you, Paul. And this is something that we're going to try and make a bit of a segment in our episodes. I'd like to hear what your favorite supplements are at the moment. What are the supplements you're using, and what are the ones that you get really excited about right now?
Well, right now, and I think this will excite you as well, is looking down the new cutting edge science of the anti-aging space. And so what I'm personally using right now, I probably honestly had 10 capsules today already, and I'll have some more tonight. But compounds such as nicotinamide mononucleotide, or NMN for short, and working on increasing NAD in our cells. So, I could probably talk for hours on this subject alone, because that's what gets me serotonin and dopamine. But I've been taking it for the last 2 to 3 weeks and feeling amazing. Energy levels are increasing, skin's clearing, focus is there, energy is there. It's pretty cool, and what it does do long term is it stops the aging process, so you can actually stop it, and now they're looking into things to actually reverse it, but that's down the track. And then also things like resveratrol, because you need trans resveratrol with NMN to get it to work. So those are the things that I'm really excited about. But also just in the fat loss space, core ingredients that work. I'm still excited about people drinking enough water. If I can get someone and all my videos simply to drink enough water, again, their hair looks better, their skin clears up, they get more energy, and they detox their body and they start burning more body fat.
And their pee doesn't smell like popcorn anymore.
It smells like popcorn. You're not drinking enough water. It's not good popcorn. You can't eat it. So you got to drink more water. And then things like acetylcarnitine and acetylcarnitine precursors like gamma-birobetane, which I'm sure you guys are all very aware of. And I can talk about that for 5 minutes pretty easily too, but I don't know how far down the rabbit hole I want to go.
What's your stance on GBB? Because it's got very minimal, like the data on it's interesting, right? So like it's sort of similar to leucine and HMB, like metabolites and all that sort of jazz. But I guess there's also some data, particularly friends like the Guerrilla Chemists and so on have put out with showing that the uptake of carnitine orally is quite poor not in the presence of insulin, for example, where you might need an insulin spike to drive the carnitine absorption. what have you sort of found in your travels with GBB and carnitine, and then that sort of efficacy for people looking at their fat burners lately? Because it's a really popular ingredient right now. Makes you sweat. No one really knows the mechanism. They're going to say it's increasing fat loss, but sweat is the body's primary detoxification process, not so much, a thermogenic response typically, unless you're looking at a direct CNS stimulant, which GBB isn't. So it doesn't really make sense why you sweat on something that isn't a CNS stimulant unless it drives detoxification.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading about GBB myself, and it's something that seems to have, I guess, most people baffled at the moment is that thermogenic effect. Why it's causing us to sweat, we don't really know at the moment. We do know it's safe. That's something that's nice. We can show that it's definitely safe, even at really, really high dosages. But we can also show that people lose weight on it. People lose body fat. So we know it's working. I think that it's a case of the research is trying to catch up to the results at the moment, and that's something we don't normally see. Normally, the research is the leading hand, and we'll see the research driving certain compounds into popular culture. But it's almost the reverse with GBB. We're taking it, we're seeing fantastic results, whether it be through, better uptake of carnitine, whether it be through the fact that it is helping us to lose weight or it is making us sweat. And let's face it, when we sweat during a workout, it's good for mentally. We feel like, hey, I'm doing something here, I'm getting it done. And, even if that's the extent of the reason that we see some effectiveness from it, that's still fantastic. But I think there's definitely more research that we'll catch up. The research will catch up to it, and we'll be able to explain this in 2 years' time. We'll be laughing at this podcast, going, "Oh man, how dopey were we?" But it is some pretty exciting stuff.
Well, we can guesstimate, I suppose, or I could put theories out there on why I think it works. Now, don't get me wrong, I haven't been present for any of these studies, but I can sort of think through, hey, how the body works and the different mechanisms on why it can work. But just before I start, I think it's quite funny you mentioned the sweat. I had a guy come in yesterday. He said he took a product with GBB and a lot of GBB, and he loved it. But he finished his gym workout, and he works in a car yard. 3 hours later, he was in a car yard. He said there wasn't a bit on his new shirt after the gym that wasn't covered in sweat. And he had to stop taking the product. Because it was working so well. But then he just saves it for the weekend. But, if you delve, as you guys have, deeply into gamma-biobetane, it does a few things. So not only is it a precursor to carnitine in blood plasma, which is where carnitine is needed to actually target free-form fatty acids, it also is a carnitine balancer. And so, like you said, you're speaking to the guerrilla chemist recently, and there are studies that show that carnitine is only or struggles to be absorbed unless it's in the presence of insulin. But a lot of people do consume carbohydrates throughout the day. So there's no reason to say that some of that carnitine isn't absorbed. But there were other studies showing that using carnitine for a period of 6 months actually showed, without the presence of insulin, absorption as well. So there's a few different schools on that. There's a lot of articles out there. What's that?
Yeah, there definitely is, because I'm an avid believer in it for particularly the neural benefits. Like anything that's an acetyl donor that'll help cross the blood-brain barrier, as well as the other part. I mean, it is, when you look at like the chemistry of fat loss, and you look at how the cleavage at the cellular level, and that involves you get a glycerol group off that, and so on, and carnitine is just triple methylated glycine. So it's a triple methylated glycerol, sorry. So it literally, in its purest form, is just methylated, the actual agent that does the uncoupling. So it does do its job, and there is cool data on it. But I always like to ask people who are well read like yourself on this stuff, because everyone has a different school of thought on it, and it plays in that whole Supp's working and so on, because the theory behind it's rock solid. And you're right, it's not as simple looking at the body as in static, in one point in time. It's like when they look at glycemic index, but like when do you ever eat just one macro by itself? When do you have just a bolus of carbs without a protein or fat in that meal? Well, unless you're Stu. It's right now, loving it.
Mate, I've been known to eat a big bowl of rice before a workout, so, you know.
With the Himalayan salt.
Just add some carnitine to it and you'll be sweet. But, the carnitine, I've seen it from personal experience because, you know, when I first got into the game, there's no university. When I say the game, I mean selling supplements. There's no university to go to learn about supplements. No. So either you learn through practical experience and feedback, and you learn through reading articles. You know, we were selling fat burners, and it wasn't until I started coupling it with carnitine that people were coming back going, hey, I'm getting a good result now. And I thought, wait a second. There is something to this, you know. So these studies that are saying that carnitine does not help fat loss, maybe in that particular study with their particular metrics and the way they were running it, it didn't show it. But I know through hundreds, if not thousands of customers, when we added carnitine to their fat burner, their results increased, including based on their environmental conditions. And then when we went ahead and kept with that stack and added conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA for short, to those two products, that's when people started seeing abdominal and thigh for female fat loss. So, you know, it was through years and hundreds or thousands of customers to learn this stuff. But going back to GBB, and what some people might not know is gamma-birobetane is a precursor to carnitine in blood plasma. So if you ingest it, and let's say it's not absorbed, if you ingest straight carnitine, you're not going to get it in blood, it's not going to attach to fat, and you're not going to move it into the mitochondria to burn as fuel. But if GBB can create carnitine in the blood, it bypasses the stomach, all of a sudden you've got a lot more carnitine exactly where it's needed, where clinical trials have shown that is where it burns fat. So there's no argument that GBB will work. But the other thing is that the body seems to regulate the ratios of carnitine and GBB. So if you put too much carnitine in your system, it'll actually spill over to GBB. But if you can put carnitine and GBB at the same time, your GBB rises with the same rate as carnitine, the body will stop down regulating it into a gamma-birobetane. So it's this swing that you can actually hold more carnitine into your system, plus convert more GBB into carnitine at the same time. And because I think we're driving so much fat loss, burning body fat is extremely thermic. As you know, burning carbohydrates has 4 calories per gram, protein 4 calories, fat is 9 calories per gram. So it's a very thermic process. So if GBB is really driving more carnitine to burn more body fat, releasing more energy, I would say you would sweat. And that is why I think people sweat on GBB, is because the carnitine is burning more body fat in their system.
That's really interesting. And it is right, you are. It's very, very dense molecule. When you look at, say, a basic sugar, so it'll be like C6H12O6 is just standard sugar, a standard sugar molecule, right? So 6 carbon. Some of the fats can go up to like, you know, C57s, you know, like, you know, C140. And so, like, you know, heavily, so very hard to oxidize molecules there with incredibly dense, well, as you said in the macro profile, it's 2.5 times the amount of energy liberated from it. Interesting theory, really, really interesting. And precursors in the supplement game tend to work better often than the straight form in a lot of cases. You know, it's like when I'm supplementing with straight GABA versus precursors there too, you know, your passion flowers, your ashwagandhas and so on, supplementing with straight tyrosine, with straight dopamine L-dopa versus tyrosine and dopamine agonist. Like, you know, often the precursor I found in the sup world works better. It gives your body the resources to do its own thing. Citrulline malate versus arginine, you know, leucine versus HMB. It's really interesting. I like that theory though. I hadn't heard it yet, and that's a cool spin, man. That's really interesting.
Hey, like I said, I'm making that up. It's a guess, but you know, in 2 years' time, if the evidence shows that it was that, I can say, hey, look, go back to 2020 and listen to a podcast. I guessed it first.
Yeah, we heard it here first, guys. That's really quite fun, actually.
Will, you know what we got to do though is we got to get you onto the NMN now. It's like this is like Paul said before. This is the area that's exciting me at the moment. And we really need to get you on it because I'd love to hear you geek out on NMN.
I want to actually, you know what? I'm actually guilty of knowing bugger all in that space. But what I found interesting is I have put some interest lately into the anti-aging space ever since I heard about telomeres. And then after that, the methylation clock is the thing I'm trying to read into the most now. So the rate that your body can methylate, I guess, detoxify as a whole. it seems to be pretty tightly linked as well with your sort of chronological age. So, and I guess NAD probably ties in there quite nicely. So I'd love to look into it more. I have been guilty of not doing enough research in that space. So if you gents want to indulge me, Paul, you sound pretty psyched about it. I know Stu's obviously he's dabbled with it with formulation, so he's obviously keen. What do you like about the science behind NMN, Paul? What's your take homes on it?
I think it's phenomenal. So first of all, you're talking about NAD and NMN. We need to say that NAD is the precursor, just what you were talking about before with the tyrosines, etc. NMN is a precursor to NAD. So what we want in the end game is NAD, but what they found is NAD as a molecule is too large to ingest. We don't get a great absorption of it, but NMN being very small, and particularly well absorbed through sublingual tissue will create and drive a lot more NAD production in the body. So basically what it is we've got these genes, and it's your SIRT1, which stands for Silent Information Response. And what they do
I say sirtuins, but...
Oh, I've heard of these, SIRT1, SIRT2s, and okay, yep.
Yes, well, sirtuins are the overall name for the 7 different SIRT1 genes. SIRT genes. So there's 7 of them, and they have been designed just through normal evolution to actually turn on and protect the body in times of stress. And so if you weren't eating a meal, the body turns around and goes, oh, geez, we're hungry, we need to protect ourselves. And they've shown in studies with rats that if we can turn on these SIRT1 gene expressions, they'll live up to 50% longer. And so what we want to do with these supplements is actually get those SIRT1 genes turned on. And so what actually happens is NAD is the fuel to actually drive and energize those SIRT1 genes. But first of all, we have to turn them on. So if we picture the body like a car, we have to put the key in. The key is something like transresveratrol. So
that's your basic on switch, because this is very similar to, say, supplementing with N-acetylcysteine for glutathione for detoxification, but the big overall archer being NRF2 activation. You're sort of saying the NAD is the NRF2 of basically the aging process, i.e. cell oxidation, where resveratrol comes in at being the antioxidant, I suppose?
Exactly. Right. So resveratrol is made in a situation of high stress for a plant. And I think the body, through evolution, has gone, because we didn't know about any of this stuff. So, millions of years of evolution, the body can detect when plants are at stress. And so if our plants and our food source are at stress, the body has to recognize this without knowing it inherently and go, look, the plant's at stress of dying, which means our food supply might die out. We need to protect ourselves, and then turn on these SIRT1 expressions. So resveratrol being an ingredient that the body actually recognizes as a stressor and goes, look, we might starve. So it's going to turn on the SIRT1 gene, and then NAD is then what is the battery source for the gene. So first we've got to turn it on, and then we've got to give it the fuel. And it actually will stop DNA damage and stop that fraying of DNA, and also protect the epigenetic code that sends signals to the body on what to do. So if our epigenetics or our code starts sending the wrong signals, which happens over time, we tear a bit of DNA, we tear trillions of DNA a day. We tear a bit of DNA, the epigenetics, which is the instruction manual for what the actual gene's supposed to do, starts spraying and not sending the right message, and then we cause aging. These 2 ingredients will turn it on and fuel it to actually repair the end of the DNA.
That's super interesting. That's
so basically, if you want to think of it like this, think of it, and this is the way that that Dr. David Sinclair explains it really well. And it's like the data on a CD, right? Everyone remembers when we used to burn CDs. So it's like you take a CD and you burn it to another CD. But if we get a scratch on that CD, we can't read the information properly, right? And this is like those torn sections of DNA or damaged DNA or lost information. If we have enough of this NAD plus and enough of these sirtuins, they can go to work to start repairing that scratch, right? And as we age, we see that we have less and less and less of these. So not only as we age is more and more information lost, but we also have less and less NAD and less sirtuins activated. So I guess the problem proliferates itself. Not only are we losing more information, we have less of these little workers, if you will, to repair the damage to the disc. So what we want to do is, I guess essentially a stem cell is our first cell, and that contains perfect data. That's got all of the perfect data for every cell that's going to be in your body. And, that will then obviously become whatever cell that it needs to be in the body, whether that's a skin cell or a nail cell or a hair cell. And, the original source of the data came from that stem cell. But as that cell replicates, every single time that cell replicates, which, as Paul said, it does every day, some information is lost. And our job to stop aging is essentially to stop that loss of information. We stop the loss of information, we stop aging. And we can see how to do it. It's been in front of us for a long time. So we've known about this NAD for a long, long time, and we've tried supplementing with NAD, but it doesn't work, or it doesn't work effectively. So, for a long time, we've supplemented with NAD, and we haven't been able to show any kind of effective results for maintaining this information that's being lost. Whereas now, I guess right at the forefront, right at the cutting edge is NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and oh, hello, we've got a new face.
Hello, Fiona.
Nicotinamide mononucleotide is seemingly the missing link.
We've had the boss.
Are you right up on this? Are you?
Oh, I wouldn't say that I'm right up on it. I'm definitely learning from Paul. He's just raced off. He'll just be 1 second. But you just wanted to pop in and see what the go is and see what's going on here. For those of you who are just listening to the podcast and not watching us on YouTube, Paul's lovely partner has just sat in his seat for a couple of minutes.
But Paul Fiona's also part of the brain, the think tank behind Fat Burners Only, the juggernaut that is what we're featuring tonight and talking about. It's lovely to have you, Phoebe. I haven't caught up with you since I think Arnold's that probably a year or two ago. How's everything been in your part of the world?
Yeah, another day in paradise, as a great Phil Collins once said. So no, we're really good. We're very lucky here in Perth. So we've been pretty chill through this whole COVID situation, and Fat Burners has been going pretty well. So yeah, we're okay. But like you guys were just chatting about the whole anti-aging NMN sort of thing. So I think that's awesome. We're has Paul told you what we're doing in our mornings, our morning routine?
He hasn't. So Paul actually came to me about a week ago and sort of, like I've been using NMN now for probably the better part of 4 or 5 months and seeing some fantastic results. Like, have a look at this face. That's not the face of a 35-year-old. But but he didn't get into what you guys were actually doing as far as supplementing it goes.
Yeah, so it's kind of beyond supplementation. So we're dipping our toe in. I personally haven't started with the NMN and stuff. I'm just waiting on a particular formula to come out. So I will probably jump on that train in the coming months. But Paul's got this crazy morning routine that we've been doing for probably the last week or two, which involves cold baths and fasting for a certain amount of time and breathing and meditation and all this kind of stuff. So I think some of the things that he's doing is in line with this kind of trying to activate that SIRT1 gene expression and, unlock the aging secrets.
Yeah, 100%. And what you're saying there is right on point. So we've been able to really effectively show that fasting is actually a powerful tool for switching on, first of all, this NAD and then these SIRT1 genes. So fasting, huge. We've been able to show in both animal and human studies that fasting will slow down the aging process. And
Definitely.
Coming back to the cold water immersion again, awesome for switching on NAD.
Yeah.
How are you finding it? How are you enjoying the cold baths?
It's actually, believe it or not, it's a hell of a lot easier than having a cold shower, I believe, because once you're in and it's kind of like it's done. But I just wanted to add a note on top of the fasting, particularly just from like a female's perspective, because I'm obviously really interested in it and have tried fasting myself, and I do fast now probably no more than 14 to 15 hours, depending on the meal that I've had the night before. And I know there's a lot of scientific research about kind of like the longer fasts, 16 to 18 hours. And I would definitely do that. I would probably do a 24-hour fast maybe once a fortnight if I feel like I need it. But just with consistently having those really long fasts for females, you need to be a little bit careful in terms of the hormonal impact it can have. So males generally can fast for a little bit longer with, getting those amazing health benefits. Just with females, particularly if you are a little bit on the leaner side, if you're not carrying a whole lot of body fat, there can be some hormonal impacts in terms of, cycles and all this kind of stuff. So just bear that in mind, do your own research is what I would add to that.
Yeah, 100%.
That's very responsive, isn't it, to energy balance? A lot of as females find during comp prep, you have to be very careful with managing the nutritional aspect and making your calorie balance not too deep in the deficit, because you do find that a lot of the hormones, primarily reproductive hormones, respond pretty negatively when you drop calories through the floor. Even in short periods, it does. And testosterone responds well similarly. We just don't happen to have a menstrual cycle, so we don't see it as obviously. But yeah, you guys.
We're just cranky all the time, right, Will?
Yeah, we're constantly PMSing. Just ask my partner.
Yeah. No, I definitely, Paul's back now, so I'll swap back over. But I definitely think it can be beneficial for females, but do your own research. And, we're gentle creatures, so do it gently and do all the right things for your body.
Yeah. Well, I've found the same thing. I've found just anecdotally for my male clients who use fasting as a method for weight loss, even see better results from fasting than women do. I haven't read too much about the data on that, but for me, anecdotally, it definitely seems to be a thing that males seem to benefit more from fasting than women.
It's a thyroid thing, interestingly. It's sort of, and more that I read about it, that seems to be the real linchpin in the HPT axis for fat loss. Like, the reason being, if you've got, like Fee mentioned, a lot of, essentially, testosterone is about 7 to 10 times more efficient at converting your inactive thyroid hormone, T4 to T3, the active form, which actually does all the lipolysis driving through cyclic AMP. And so the conversion of 4 to 3 at a cellular level is really dependent on testosterone. Women obviously have 1/100th of what we have. So we have a lot of sort of better ability to drive metabolic rate constantly, even in calorie deprivation, which is why things like amenorrhea, where women's cycle stops due to calorie balance deprivation, is common through comp prep. But guys, our testosterone lowers, but our metabolic rate doesn't always drop as severely as female competitors. You would have seen this in your stores, Paul. You said you helped a lot of female competitors. The female competitors often have to really carefully reverse diet out of comps and be very conscious about repairing the metabolism after a comp. Hey, we've all seen blowouts, for that reason, I think.
100%. I've seen it. I've had people come in that they competed once and then they couldn't compete again. That was it for them. And then we were able to turn it around and get them back on stage. But yes, with a guy, I'm sorry, ladies, we're just a lot more luckier in the hormonal aspects, in the sense that we don't get the issues that you get. Like an example that I've found is guys can pump steroids for years and years and years and then run one post-cycle therapy and be back to normal. Whereas, a female can take one testosterone pill and it can throw things out for years. So, it's men have it a lot easier. And so,
Yeah, we've got more forgiving profile, don't we? Because I think there's also less complexity in how we go. Like, we're sort of, it's like you got from, DHEA down to test, which either goes DHT down to estrogen. It's pretty boring. Like, with women, you've got to look at progesterone, progesterone, prolactin, and estrogen, all in ratios, and that also fluctuates on a 14-day cycle as well. It's very, very complex to manage, actually. And you do see that, particularly in things like estrogen-dominant body fat storage. You mentioned before, Paul, actually, I'd love to hear your opinion. You said CLA supplementation you find has some impact on some of the sites that I would consider to be hormonal-specific sites, with paracrine endocrinology coming into it also, like your estrogen-dominant body sites being lower stomach, lower back, hip, butt, thighs, back of arms. You said CLA happens to have an impact on this. Where does that come into it? Where do you find that's the...
Well, what we found is CLA, obviously the way the body breaks up foods is that you chew, breaks it down, stomach acid breaks it down, but then we need enzymes to actually get it small enough to go through the small intestine into the bloodstream. So in response to any macronutrient will be a certain enzyme to break it down. So with CLA, the body seems to produce a specific lipase enzyme, and enzymes work like lock and key. So enzymes will bump into everything. And until they hit that activation site or that key site to unlock it, they'll just keep bumping into everything. So it seems that the same shaped fat as CLA is white subcutaneous adipose fat. So it'll actually go into that fat, break it up, and cause liposis in that area of that adipose tissue, which is where the body doesn't produce that enzyme by itself. You need to create it, and you do that through CLA. So that's where it can work. However, the body does use those sites to store estrogen toxins. And so what we find is water, believe it or not, is actually one of the best detoxifiers you can get. So if we tell people to drink enough water, or maybe a little bit over, not too much, because we don't want to flush out all your vitamins and minerals. You know, if we tell a female drink 3 and a typical male 4 litres a day, it will typically detoxify a lot of that stubborn body fat. The CLA can go in, break it up. The carnitine can grab it, move it to the mitochondria, and the calorie deficit from a fat burner can burn it. However, if there's too many toxins in the body, then you can look at things like DIM or brassica extract to actually bind to those xenoestrogens, and then maybe calcium D or some other compounds to then flush them out.
But a lot of hormones are fat soluble. So when you say increase water intake to help pull that out, where do you find, because that detoxification, I'm assuming you're saying through detoxification of the excess, phytoestrogens or whatever might be built up there. But like these hormones are typically fat soluble, being cholesterol based at the very beginning. So how do you sort of find that the increased water intake helps in that particular scenario, mate? What's your protein? Where's that sort of click in?
So scientifically, we're not too sure, because what I've noticed is through my anecdotal evidence, when we had those 3 products, the fat burner, the carnitine, the CLA, we were getting about 50% of people saying it wasn't working. And then, I was scratching my head, why is it working for some and not others? And it wasn't until I started questioning their water intake that I found out that it wasn't working with these people that weren't drinking water. So we got them to drink more water, and every single person we put this triple stack on was losing body fat. And so why is it working? Is it because it's driving more functions in the body? Is it driving more chemical reactions? Is it making the health of our organs better to flush? There's so many different reasons why it could be happening. I didn't study that sort of thing at uni, I don't know, but all we know is that it worked anecdotally.
Yeah, cool. And that's some of the best science. I think the bro science is king all of the time, isn't it, mate? It's real. Like, and like Stu said, sometimes it's about making that catch up to the real thing. So, phenomenal, man. I've really enjoyed actually so far, gentlemen. This episode we've managed to start with the real broad overview on some business tips, and go right through to really deep dive on cellular level chemistry. This has been a really interesting and I think valuable episode for listeners. We've covered everything from tips for entrepreneurs right through to the aging process at a cellular level. I hope to think that everything from supplement nerds to entrepreneurs will have fun. The Gary Vee fans right through to the absolute sup geeks should hopefully have pulled something out of tonight.
I think you're going to find a lot of people after this episode are going to jump online and search for NMN. And they're probably going to be a little bit shocked when they see the price.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive compound for legitimate NMN. If you're buying NMN and it is not super expensive, there is no possible way it can be legitimate, real NMN. And unfortunately, there's a lot of shonky NMN products out there on eBay and such. So just be careful if you are shopping for NMN.
Yes, yeah. Anything under $100 even, don't even look at it. It's not. And, you get products that have NMN on there, then you get the product and it's just resveratrol with quercetin and there's no NMN in there. So, you need to be really, really careful. But, if you find the real stuff, it's pretty expensive. And I hope someone, like you said, that they enjoyed the episode and they're not bored by the start or bored by the end. Hopefully we've interested them the whole way through.
We've got a really beautiful organic chemistry, I think, in this podcast, though, in that the project was built purely from a place of like wanting to allow the, sort of we put out what we think would be interesting. We look at, all three of us, everyone we get on, we've always got years and years in the game. Everyone that we try and bring on has got a really unique perspective too. And we let that dictate the response of the market. We let the market resonate with it. We don't have a particular target demographic. We don't have anything like that. We're not, we're not marketing gurus. We're not going, certain people want to hear this sort of content. No, this is all a passion project. This is something that we all started, Matt Highgate, Stu and myself, to really just, talk about things we just find interesting and cool. And that involves some business, some fitness, some athletes, some bodybuilding, some subs, some geeking out, just some joking around. And it all, people can hopefully take away different parts from each thing. Some people will really cherish this sort of stuff. And I guess what was really interesting that I found before we call it a night was that a lot of the things that you mentioned were actually not a lot of the things that drive detoxification and indeed therefore the anti-aging stuff later on with oxidative stress. They're not necessarily in themselves good for you. A lot of them actually, like antioxidants are actually things that are toxins, right? And they actually tend to stimulate a certain detox pathway. That's how they cause the antioxidant effect. They stimulate a pathway by introducing a small toxin which stimulates part of that pathway. And it's really, really interesting. A lot of them aren't actually what we think where they're fantastic for you. Polyphenols, for example, a lot of things in blueberries and green tea and fenugreek and all these like really powerful herbs that we find. A lot of these aren't actually good for you. They stimulate a particular pathway because they're actually, your body wants to get rid of them. So it's really, really fascinating. The whole anti-aging, detoxification, antioxidant space, really, really cool. We might even have to do a part 2 in future, Paul, but thank you so much, man, for giving us so much of your time. You're a busy man. You've got a heap going on. And it's lovely to hear from Fiona too. It's been a long time. It's nice to have a tag team on the interview. A lot of your content online is usually the two of you, which is lovely to see. So it's good to get both of you on, if only briefly. So wonderful indeed. Thank you kindly for your time there, Paul. Stu, thank you as well for your time there, mate. I hope you've got in sideways. I probably took over a bit too much tonight, but
no. It's look, this was kind of more your episode than mine. Getting Paul on, I knew it would be one of the exciting ones for you. But it's been fantastic talking to you, Paul. Thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, have a good night and keep killing it with the Fat Burners Only.
Appreciate it, guys. My pleasure. Yeah, and we'll chat again soon.
Indeed, guys. Thank you for listening, everyone. That was the Wot Supp podcast, episode 8. Calling it a wrap. Cheers.